Hello, all you people of the internet. Today, I'm super excited to be celebrating the 10th anniversary of The Serpent's Shadow, the third and final book in the Kane Chronicles, by helping out with a collaboration put together by a healthy dose of Fran. So go check out Fran's channel for more amazing Rick Riordan content. Thank you so much for putting this one magical scene series together. I'm super happy to be a part of it, and I can't wait to get started. Through this series on YouTube, each of us is going to be talking about one magical scene from the Kane Chronicles that stood out to us as either being very important to the plot or very memorable. So some scenes that we talk about might have more sentimental values, while other scenes might have more important values with regards to the plot. But before I get into that, for those of you who do not know what the Kane Chronicles are, it is New York Times bestselling author Rick Riordan's Egyptian mythology series, set in the same universe as the Percy Jackson and the Olympians books. The Kane Chronicles follows siblings Carter and Sadie Kane throughout their journey of discovering the world of Egyptian mythology and magic and monsters. I would like to give a spoiler warning right now while we're at the beginning, because I'm going to be talking about a lot of things in the Kane Chronicles, especially in the last book, and I will also be mentioning the crossover books between the Kane Chronicles and Percy Jackson. So this is just warning ahead of time. If you're okay with getting spoiled or you already know everything, move on right ahead. If not, go read the Kane Chronicles. Also, I apologize in advance if I butcher any names. I am a lot better at pronouncing Greek and Roman mythology based names instead of Egyptian mythology based names. So if I screw anything up, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to try my best. So please just know that I'm trying. Okay, without further ado, let's get right on into this. If you couldn't tell by the name of this video, I am going to be talking about the first scene in The Serpent's Shadow, the start of the finale of the Kane Chronicles. And by the first scene, I really mean the first two chapters that are narrated by Sadie, but like, hear me out. If this was in a DVD and there were scene selections that you could go to, this would be the first scene selection. So like, it's fine. I'm resting my case for talking about these first two chapters in this book. Before I get into a lot of the details about why I picked the scene and why I think it's very important and memorable, I'm just going to give a quick recap of what happened for those of you who might have forgotten. So the gang from Brooklyn House, Carter, Sadie, Walt, Alyssa, and little Felix, go and visit the 51st Gnome in Dallas, Texas, where they believe Apophis is targeting a scroll because it might help the magicians defeat Apophis in a few days' time when he plans to swallow the sun. During this visit to the Dallas Museum of Art, Sadie receives a warning from a face in the wall that the scroll is not the main objective that they should be looking for, but instead it should be this box that they should retrieve and protect. Sadie doesn't really know what to make of this, so she kind of ignores it for a few minutes, and they focus on trying to save the scroll. And of course, a battle breaks out and there's lots and lots of fighting. During this intense fight, Sadie sees that they're losing their battle. So she uses all of her strength to summon Matt and save everyone. Now, Matt is basically the command for order and harmony. So this is a very big move by Sadie, which is a good thing because she ends up saving everyone, at least all of her friends. Unfortunately, the entire 51st gnome gets completely destroyed in that process, and all of the magicians associated with that gnome are killed. So it's a very intense start to this book. And honestly, it's what I would expect going into the finale of a Rick Riordan series. Now I want to break down the specific moments in the scene that I think really make it stand out and make it really important with regards to just the rest of the plot for the book in general, and then also highlighting other things that like I really love. So the first and one of the most important things that I want to point out from this scene is that it highlights just how powerful Sadie Kane is. Like, she literally summons Matt, which is order and harmony. Like, she just completely blows everyone away. She has to summon so much strength in her that it almost kills her. This girl literally almost dies, like in the second chapter of this book. And it's like, what do you expect from a Rick Riordan book? Because she uses so much of her energy to use this command and save all of her friends, she ends up passing out from it and actually has a like dream vision where she's speaking to Isis and her mom. And in this, Isis praises Sadie for using that. Like, she is just so blown away. And she tells Sadie that this has only been used once before, like ever in the history of magician magic. And so I just love how, like, this really highlights how strong Sadie Kane is. Like, she's always been amazing throughout the series. It's very clear that she's a powerful magician. But this moment in particular, it really just shows how essential she is for the whole plot of this and how important she is in helping save the world, and why she really is a leader of Brooklyn House and why her and Carter are the main ones. And it's because they can do things that no one else can, and they're so strong and resilient. And so I really love that this opening scene right off the bat highlights how Sadie is just that powerful. I think it's so great. Okay, moving on to the second most important thing that I think happens in the scene, which is the introduction to one of the most important characters for this particular book and also for the future crossovers. And that's Setne. I'm probably saying that wrong. I hope I'm not, but that's how I've always read it. It's probably wrong. I'm sorry in advance. Like, truly, I'm probably saying it wrong, so I'm so sorry. But he is the one that appears as the face in the wall that tells Sadie to not worry about the scroll and instead save this different artifact that will be more important later on in their quest to defeat Apophis. And this box ends up being the shadow box of King Tut. Now, foreshadowing is such an important element when it comes to storytelling. And I think Rick really does a great job here foreshadowing who this character is and how he's going to be important. Later on, when Setne turns out to be a completely despicable character that is really just greedy and trying to get what he wants and doesn't care about anything else, it's a great twist because right away when we first get a glimpse of him right here in this beginning scene, we think that he's trying to help Carter and Sadie. We think that he's on their side and he's trying to help stop the end of the world. But then later it's like, no, guy just wanted immortality. So that's, what can you do? But not only is he important for this book, he's also a key character later on in the crossover stories where Carter and Sadie interact with Percy and Annabeth. So really, this is the first glimpse of this character that carries out not through this book, but through side books. I don't know if Rick will bring him up again at any point when he starts writing more standalone books, but you never know. So maybe keep him in mind. Okay, now I want to talk about how honestly dark the end of the scene is. And it's kind of funny because I don't remember how dark this was. Like, I've never reread the full Serpent Shadow. I've never reread the full Kane Chronicles front to back. So I guess maybe this is part of that, but I truly do not remember how dark the end of this chapter was. And it was just crazy to me looking back at this now, how Rick had written that into a book and how I could possibly forget about it. The entire 51st Gnome is killed. Like, the Brooklyn House group basically witnesses mass murder, and like, why don't I remember that? Also, why isn't it talked about? Like, the toll that this was already taking on the magicians around the world is so prevalent, especially in these opening chapters when Carter and Sadie talk about how they've gone to other gnomes, but they were too late and everyone had already been killed, and how they're trying to save this one and they're trying to get ahead so that they can save the world. And then they end up failing. So it's just very impactful. Like, you don't get a lot of moments like this in Rick Riordan books. And when you do, you really just kind of have to take a minute and sit there and think about how really serious it is what these characters have to go through. It's just another emphasis on how heroic acts and efforts always come at some sort of price. And in this case, it was the lives of everyone at the 51st Gnome. So it just like really struck me how right at the beginning of this book, we're shown how serious the situation is, how much it's changed since the end of the last book, and how there might be even more tragedies to come. But while I'm speaking about heroic efforts and what these characters have to go through, in these opening chapters, And through this whole scene at the 51st gnome, when Sadie is using that and she looks into the duat and she sees everyone in their like fighting forms with their host gods and the paths that they follow, she sees how Walt is already marked by death, and it really scares her. And that's just another element of foreshadowing that I think Rick does a great job at for later on when Walt becomes the first human host of Anubis. And so this just really emphasizes how like everything right from the beginning has a purpose, is meaningful. It's part of the bigger plot. So yeah, all of that was kind of heavy, but I want to take a moment to talk about why I honestly like remembered like this scene in the first place and why it was one of the first things that came to my head when I was thinking about scenes that I really thought were important for the series or even just memorable. And it's just the fact that I distinctly remember the trainees from Brooklyn House raiding the gift shop in the first chapter, and how Felix has his penguins and it's just like, you know, just doing his own thing. And I love Felix and his penguins. Like that is one of my favorite things about the series is Felix and his penguins. Like, I don't think I can describe how much I love them. Like, it's just, you have this whole scene, right? And like all scenes in the Kane Chronicles. And then you just have Felix and his penguins. Like, they're just there. And it's just that little touch of Rick Riordan humor and magic that just like really just is amazingly and strategically put into scenes that can make really serious parts seem funny, and it still has that humor to it, because like the entire concept of Felix and his penguins is just such an oxymoron in and of itself, and it's literally just funny. It's just a funny concept. Like, Felix is a magician that follows the paths of the Egyptian gods, and he wants to use ice-based magic. Chef's kiss. That's all I can say. Like, it's just so great. I really don't know how else I can describe that. He's just the comedic relief that I need in the series. And he's just this adorable 10-year-old kid. Like, look at him. How could you not love that? So when you have a book that opens with a scene of just a bunch of Brooklyn House occupants, just like raiding a gift shop and just freaking havoc kind of, and like being themselves, you know you're in for a crazy ride and a crazy journey throughout the story. And that's just one of the things that always stuck with me when I look back at those books. It's just, I loved the dynamics of the Brooklyn House occupants. It's always the family-oriented things that really stick with me. So, you know, that's memorable for you. And so thus began the journey that was the Serpent Shadow, the start of the conclusion of the Kane Chronicles series. Even though we get more Carter and Sadie in the form of the crossovers, and the Brooklyn House Magician's Manual came out a few years ago, I think it was 2018, nothing else in this series has really been elaborated on since then. But if you're like me and you've read the latest Rick Riordan book, you just might have some hope for that triple crossover in the future. Just a little bit. But until then, that is it. This is my one magical scene from the Kane Chronicles. So happy 10th anniversary, Serpent Shadow. I can't believe we've come so far, and I can't believe how much this fandom has grown. Everyone, please be sure to check out the other one magical scene videos for this series. They are by a bunch of amazing YouTubers, so please just go and support them and their channels. I will post a link in the description to a playlist that will have all of these videos on it, so you can check it out that way. Okay, until next time, everyone, stay safe, stay healthy, and be kind to each other. The world needs it.